Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Populist Politics. I'm your host, Bobby Funk. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. We got an exciting show planned for you guys. We're going to talk more about the Iran war. In our first episode, we talked about the administration's justification for this war. Then we talked about the overall strategies of all the key actors, Iran, the United States, and Israel, and what they seek to gain in this conflict. Tonight, we're going to focus on a more narrow part of the war, which is the economic sector of the war, and specifically on the Strait of Hormuz's impact on the economic world economy, on the economic aspect of this war. And the Strait of Hormuz is a small, narrow passageway that 20% of the world's oil travels through. Iran exports much of this to China and Russia, but they also export some of it to the United States and Europe. The reason that this is playing such a vital part of this war is because oil and gas, which pass through the strait the most, is priced globally. So an impact on 20% of the oil production is going to hurt the United States economy, as Iran is not letting U.S. ships or their allies pass the strait without getting their ships being hit by ballistic missiles and drones. So this is playing a vital role in the pressure that's being put on the U.S. economy. And Trump is trying to relieve this economic pressure. And this price of oil is now above $100 a barrel. And this is not good for the Trump administration this year because it's a midterm election year. And public opinion is going to decrease for this war as Americans go to the gas pump and they see these high prices and they ask themselves, what is this war benefiting me? So Trump has a lot of economic pressure on his hand. So he did something bold this weekend. He struck Kharg Island. He struck military infrastructure on that island, different IRGC command centers. He also struck their sea mine production centers, where they have been setting these traps for tankers, for the U.S. military, if they decide they want to try to escort any tankers through that strait. So here's a picture of broader, let me bring it up. Here's a picture of broader Iran, and you have military infrastructure there. There's also the tab on oil infrastructure. And Kharg Island is this island just off the coast of the mainland. Kharg Island right there. And they use this vital island for ships to not have to go to the port. So these ships are coming from deep waters into the Persian Gulf, and they park at this Kharg Island, and they're able to avoid the shallow waters of the mainland. So you can load 10 of these super tankers at once at this Kharg Island port. And the way they get the petroleum to the island, because it's off the coast, they have submarine pipelines that travel from the mainland to Kharg Island, where they're able to load these super tankers up and export it out to Russia, China, the United States, and Europe. And this is vital infrastructure that, if struck, would detriment Iran's economy. But Trump didn't strike that. He struck the military infrastructure on that island. But he didn't do that without warning Iran that if the strait is not open soon to the United States and their allies, that he will rethink that decision. So this is a strike that would scare the Iranians into complying with Trump to open the straits, or to his more aggressive demands to stop supposedly building a nuclear weapon. You can refer back to my video on the administration's justifications for this war for that. And everybody's wondering what would happen if we struck those oil infrastructures. It would cause Tehran to unload on the United States. They said if any strike were to strike those oil infrastructures, that any and all oil infrastructure in the region, including the Gulf cooperation states, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, all those countries that are condemning Iran's attacks on their oil infrastructure in the first place, that they're all going to get struck, and anything and everything in sight that is getting benefits from the United States and Israel will be struck. So this would be an escalation. And there's only one time that these oil infrastructures were hit. It was hit in the Iran-Iraq war as well, where the Iraqis struck not once but twice on these oil infrastructure, and it caused the Iranian regime to be set back decades in their oil. And it was a hard time in the 90s for the Iranian regime, as their whole economy was decimated because of that war. So the United States is trying to relieve the pressure, this economic pressure, by, one, they're trying to threaten the regime to open the straits. And Trump has floated around the timeline as well. He says that the war is going to end soon, conveniently on Fridays when the market is closing. So when it opens back on Monday, it won't be shocked by what he does on the weekend. That's kind of Trump's MO with attacks. He did in Venezuela, he attacked on a Friday. If you remember, when this war started on February 28th, was a Friday night in the United States. So there's definitely a trend there. He has also tried to get other countries to unleash their oil reserves, mainly Russia, Europe, to send oil reserves to the United States, to everywhere that is affected by this closure of the straits. And he hasn't, they said that it won't be for another month or two that these oil reserves would relieve the market. And he's also floated around that Iran wants a deal, saying that Iran wants to come to the table, but their foreign minister, Agrashi, has said that, why would we do that? The last two times that we negotiated with the United States, they attacked us, and this is why we're in this war, because they will not negotiate in good faith, according to the Iranians. You also have this idea that Marines could invade Iran. And you have reports that 5,000 U.S. troops, U.S. Marines, were boarded on an amphibious ship on its way to the Middle East. An amphibious ship is a ship that can have an air assault. It's like an aircraft carrier, plus it has the area down below for Marines to have a land and sea invasion. So they floated around this idea of sending the Marines, but their role is in question. What would these Marines do? Would they try to go into the strait and forcibly open up the strait? Will they have a land invasion of Iran to completely regime change this theocracy? Or are they going to take Kharg Island and try to economically strain the regime? Nobody really knows, but all I know is looking at this map, it's going to be a tactical nightmare here. So let's just say an amphibious warship were to come through this strait. You have mines that they're supposedly laying all around the Strait of Hormuz, through the Persian Gulf, up to Kharg Island. And then you have also, they have cruise missiles, coastal cruise missiles, that they can fire through these Bandar, Khomeini, South Pars Field, all these military sites that I'm showing you. Bandar Abbas, they can send these cruise missiles to these amphibious ships, and it will be all out rain of drones, missiles, ballistic missiles that they can also strike from Tehran and other military sites that have not been completely decimated by the United States airstrikes. The thing that I can compare this to is this would be like Doomsday, D-Day, that assault on the Normandy beaches. The Iranians would see us coming with these ships from a mile away, and they'd send all these cruise missiles and these ballistic missiles, these drones, and our troops are going to be like sitting ducks. We're going to have mass casualties. And this is not a tactical war here that you can win through this narrow strait, being bombarded by all this enemy defense. What is the United States thinking when they want to do such a thing? And Trump has also floated the idea of, he's posted on Truth Social that he wants all the countries in the world to send their military ships, their warships, to the straits to help him open the strait up to the United States. And Iran responded by saying that the Strait of Hormuz is opened to everybody besides the United States and their allies. So that he hasn't gotten any commitment from them to do this. So everybody's questioning what the administration is doing now. You have them coming up today. Trump had this White House press conference with his staff and his cabinet members. And he was saying that we are striking all their, he's regurgitating the same stuff he said for 2.5, 3 weeks now, that we are destroying their Navy, we're destroying their Navy, we're destroying their Air Force, we're destroying their production of missiles and drones, but they're still getting all these missiles and drones off and hitting airports. They hit the Dubai airport today, and they're still causing havoc. So how are we to trust that this regime is losing its missile capabilities when they just keep getting these drones off, and we are going to be degraded of our interceptors? Now, there's been floating this idea that this new radar system can help, where radars are being developed where they can have this on U.S. military equipment, and you can pin this radar on a drone, and when you strike the radar, when you hit the laser on the drone, that the computer is going to malfunction on the drone, and it's going to pour down to the ground and destroy. But this new radar tactic to intercept is not in widespread production, and it would take months for the company that makes this to distribute it to the Gulf countries, because only the U.S. military has access to this, and we'd have to sell it to the Gulf states. So there's a question of whether if we escalate this war by striking those oil infrastructure, or we have a land invasion, then all these missiles that they may or may not have, we've been hearing that they're 90% down in missile launches for the last 2 weeks, but we haven't seen them. We've seen them still getting off these missiles, and it's a question of how many missiles do they have and how many interceptors can we possibly defend ourselves with and our allies with. So that's kind of the discussion that I have for you on the economic aspect of this, a land invasion, and all that. So we're going to shift gears here. We're going to talk about some about the rhetoric in the MAGA movement. So you had Trump in a Truth Social post today. Pull it up. So Trump in his Truth Social post, let me read it. So this is about Mark LEVIN. He's a Fox host where he's been clamoring about some of the people on the right being anti-Israel, and he thinks that we should fight this war for Israel and that our interests are always the same thing as Israel, which is definitely not the case. So Trump defended Mark LEVIN, saying, "A true American patriot is somewhat under siege by other people with far less intellect, capability, and love for our country. Mark is tough, strong, and brilliant, hence the nickname The Great One, conceived by our MAGA friend Sean Hannity. After years of dealing with Mark in legal media and other capacities, Mark would often do Sean's show, speaking as a lawyer, and Sean realized then, blah, blah, blah. He was drafted by the very smart people who understood that there are few like him. He's a true conservative in intellect, far smarter than those who criticize him, but above all else, he is a man of great wisdom. When Mark is unfairly attacked, remember that they are jealous and angry human beings who sway in much less than the public understands, and will now that they know where I stand rapidly diminish. Others then, for this wonderful wife and family, Mark LEVIN only cares about wants one thing, greatness and success for America. I think he wants greatness and success for Israel. Those that speak ill of Mark will quickly fall by the wayside and do the people whose ideas, policies, and footings are not sound. They are not MAGA, I am, and MAGA includes not allowing Iran, a sick, demented, and violent terrorist regime, to have a nuclear weapon to blow up the United States of America, the Middle East, and ultimately the rest of the world. MAGA is about stopping them cold, and that is exactly what we are doing. God bless our great military, and God bless Mark LEVIN." So Mark LEVIN is a staunch pro-Israel, saying that we need to have our interests align with Israel's on everything, and that this war was not for Israel, it was for us. But those nuclear weapons, those ballistic missiles, we only have an interest in stripping them of nuclear weapons, because that would prevent us from access to the Persian Gulf oil. But a war with Iran, as we can see right now, what I've talked about tonight, is that we are cut off from this Persian Gulf oil at this point in time. So that is our true interest, in not letting them get a nuclear weapon. because any nuclear power can cause us not to have access to the Persian Gulf. And ballistic missiles, as much as Levin wants you to believe that they can attack the United States mainland, they can't. Intercontinental ballistic missiles are not developed yet. It can only threaten Israel. And Mark likes to pose that the reason that Iran attacks U.S. military personnel is because they just hate America. They shout death to America. But the reason they actually shout death to America is because we support Israel and their objectives in the region to suppress Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And if we have conditions on Israel, let's just say we condition our military and economic support to Israel on the basis that they treat Palestinians and Arabs in the region humanely, then Iran would not bomb our military sites anymore. They won't go after U.S. military personnel because that's the reason they hate us, not because they just instinctively hate us. They hate us because of Israel. And that is the true reason why we're going to war, because Israel dragged us into this war because they want to be the hegemon in the Middle East, and Iran stands in their way. That's the reason for this war. This war is not in America's interests. The American interest is to strike a deal with Iran, one that might look similar to Obama's JCP, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, where Iran is only able to enrich uranium to a certain percent, and we lift economic sanctions on them. Their civilian nuclear program is not a threat to us. What is a threat to us is their nuclear power to weapons grade. And they have told us that they don't have any interest in this, but Israel has been clamoring for years that they've made the bomb, they made uranium enough to have a bomb. And Benjamin Netanyahu has been saying this since the 80s. And we don't know whether to believe them. I've talked about this in the first episode about the administration's rhetoric, that it's not consistent, and it's similar to the Bush administration's Iraq 2003 justification. They terrorized the region, they terrorized our troops, and for 47 years, they are this terrorist regime, just like they posed war with Saddam Hussein, that they had nuclear weapons without any proof. We went in there was no nuclear weapons, and we were fooled. And I think that we were fooled again to go to this war for Israel's benefits. And when we come out of this, yes, we've set them back 5-10 years with destroying their ballistic missile production. But if regime change doesn't happen, then they're just going to rebuild in 5 to 10 years. And this would be for nothing. And we've spent billions of dollars in resources, and 12 American servicemen are dead for nothing. So anyways, that is my rant to you guys tonight. Thank you for joining the show tonight. I thought it was very productive, and I hope you guys like the show and want me to do more on this topic and other topics. We've talked tonight about the Strait of Hormuz, the economic aspect of the Iran war. We've talked about the MAGA controversy, that Mark LEVIN is the face of MAGA now, apparently. And it signifies, maybe I'm not done, guys. It signifies the shift in MAGA. So in 2015, when Trump came down the escalator, he vowed that we would never have another forever war. We would drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. But it seems the warmongers, and Mark Levin represents the warmonger. He has been salivating at his tooth and mouth, wanting the United States to strike Iran ever since he joined Fox News. And it's clear that he represents another key administration member that represents the same thing is Lindsey Graham. They're always vouching for war, and Trump promised us on the campaign trail in 2016 that this would end and he would drain the swamp and we would have America first. We would put our interests first. But war with Iran is not in our interests. And it's just disappointing, and we feel like Trump has definitely capitulated to the corruption in Washington. Maybe by his old age, he's getting more weaker and just unwilling to fight for the American people. We thought Make America Great Again was not for corporations. It wasn't for these neocons that are war hungry, that want us to get into forever wars in the Middle East for Israel's gain and not our gain. We don't benefit much from this war, but we take on the risks. Israel has been in these wars for years. We take on the risks, and Israel just benefits from it. We are oceans away. We don't need to be in this. We should just pull out. The Iranians might declare victory, but it will be worth it because we won't have to spend $1 billion a day anymore. So we talked about the economic strategies, and we also talked about this shift in the right, and also has to do with the MAGA civil war over our support for Israel. Thank you guys for joining the show tonight. I hope you liked it. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think of this episode. And if you watched the first 3 episodes, let me know about those as well. Thank you and have a good night, everybody.